All right, ladies and gentlemen, in this one, we're going to go ahead and we are going to create this awesome pumpkin right here using a lot of procedural methods. Of course, Halloween is right around the corner next month, so let's go ahead and do this. In a new scene over here, with the default cube, yes, we're going to use the default cube. Let's go ahead and hit Control 3 to add a subdivision surface level of 3. Over here in the modifiers, go ahead and apply that subdivision surface modifier, and then I'm going to hit 1 to go into front view. Right click, shade smooth, and right now let's go ahead and carve in the pattern that we want. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift A. I'm just going to add a mesh plane, and with this mesh plane, I'm going to go into edit mode, select this vertex right here, Control I to invert the selection, and delete the vertices, so that now I basically just have one single vertex. I'm going to go into front view, and with this vertex, let's bring it here, and I'm just going to Control right click to start extruding this and give it whatever kind of shape I want. So right here, go ahead and draw whatever you want. You could draw a moon, a wolf, whatever you want carved into your pumpkin. Here, I'm just going to draw the traditional face. I'm going to select the opposing vertices here and hit the F key to fill. And I'm going to click Add Modifier, Mirror, and turn on Clipping as well. So now we have both of the eyes. Let's make the mouth. I'm going to select a vertex, Shift D, duplicate it, bring it over here, and bring it so that it basically merges in the center right here. Then I'm going to Control right click once again and start extruding. So right here, again, just creating a simple kind of pumpkin mouth right here, like so, and then right here, like that. Again, you could create it however you want. Here, I'm just going to hit the E key, extrude, and if you want to move things around manually, you can, obviously. You could just move these around manually. Here, maybe turn off the clipping, bring this over, E key to extrude, turn on clipping, and manually adjust that one right there. And like I said, you can move things around as you want. All right, so once you have whatever pattern or design you want, again, you can make a wolf, a moon, the Blender logo, whatever you want. Once you have that, we're going to go ahead and make sure that it's in front of the sphere. You want it to be in front of the sphere. In front view, we're going to select our sphere, tab to go into edit mode. In the outliner, Control left click the plane or the outline that we drew. And we're going to go to Mesh and select Knife Project. And this is going to project this outline as a knife tool into our sphere. So now we could select this that we created, the outline, delete it, and then select our sphere, hit X, delete the faces. And there we go. We have a pumpkin. Well, sort of. It looks more like a basketball right now. So let's add some thickness. I'm going to go to Add Modifier, Solidify right here, and let's increase the thickness right here until we have something like that. Right now, I'm going to right click and shade auto smooth just for now so that we have some nicer shading. Then here at the top, I'm going to select this top vertex, hit the O key to turn on proportional editing, and make sure you have the top center vertex. I'm going to hit G, Z, bring this down like so that we have the inset right here where the stem is going to go. So something like that right there. All right, very cool. I'm going to minimize this. I'm then going to hit Control 2 to add another subdivision surface. And right here for the stem, I'm just going to hit Shift A. Let's add a circle. I'm going to change it from 32 to, let's say, 16 right here. And let's bring it up, S key to scale. And here I'm just going to go ahead and with everything selected in edit mode, let's go to select. And right here, we're going to click on checker deselect and it will select every other one. Then we're going to hit the S key. Let's turn off proportional editing. S key, scale these in like that. And then Alt left click this whole loop, E key, extrude it on the Z, and then go ahead and extrude it again like so. Rotate it, scale it down, and just hit the F key to fill it in. Then we could scale this down bring it in, and then let's select both of these, Control A, apply the scale on both of them. All right, so now that we got that, I want to also go ahead and deform my pumpkin a little bit so that's not completely spherical. For that, I'm going to use a lattice, which is not used that often these days, I feel like. So Shift A, let's add a lattice and scale it up so that it fits the whole pumpkin. And lattices are really awesome. What they allow for us to do is to deform, squash, and stretch our mesh in a non-destructive way. Let's select our pumpkin. I'm going to add another modifier, lattice, and for the object, select the lattice object. Let's go to our lattice. We have our lattice properties here. Let's change the resolution on the U, V, and W to 3. And now what happens, we could just grab these vertices and move them around and it will squash and stretch our pumpkin. We could also turn on proportional editing and now we could just give it a kind of shape that is not perfectly spherical. So feel free to shape this however you want. Obviously a lot of pumpkins are very uneven, so you could just give this a kind of random looking shape like that. And this adds a lot of character to it. You could even squash the head a little bit like that. So now what we're going to do, now that we have all that, let's go ahead and make the materials. So I'm going to split the viewport, go to the shader editor, and here with the pumpkin first selected, let's go to material preview and add a new material. Here we're going to go ahead and hit Shift A. What I want to do is I want it to have the lines around the pumpkin. So I'm going to hit Shift A. Let's get a gradient texture. With Node Wrangler add-on enabled, I'm going to hit Control T, add a mapping and texture coordinate, and change it to object. Let's then Control Shift left click this twice to go to the factor. And we're going to change this from linear to radial right here. So change it to radial. So now we have basically one line going down. Now I want many more, so we're going to multiply this. Let's add a math node right here. We're going to change it to multiply. And then I'm going to duplicate this math node, drop it right after, and change it to ping pong. Let's put the scale on the ping pong to 1. What this is going to do is it's going to ping pong between a value of 0 and 1. You can see right now it's at 0, and it's ping ponging all the way to a value of 1. Now this multiply right here is going to allow for us to multiply how many times it's ping ponging. So if we increase this, you can see we get this right here. So now again, it's ping ponging between 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, etc. So go ahead and change this to whatever value you want for the multiply. Next, I want to go ahead and change how this is easing. So right now it's kind of a linear fall off, but I want to change that. I want to make it even smoother. So let's hit Shift A, add a color ramp, drop it after the ping pong. And right here, we're going to change it from linear, which it already is, to B-spline right here. And now you can see it's a much smoother fall off. And then let's bring this white slider down a little bit, which will increase right here. So where it's darker is where the pumpkin is going to be indented, and where it's white, it's going to be raised. Now let's go ahead and drop this principled shader after the color ramp. We obviously need to add some color to this. So let's add another color ramp after this color ramp. So right here, I'm going to select this color ramp, Shift D, duplicate it, drop it right here. And for the colors I'm going to use, you can use whatever colors you want, but I just went on Google and looked for pumpkin hex code to get the color of a pumpkin. Right here on this black color, I'm going to go ahead and put the hex code E56916. And on the white color, I'm going to go ahead and put the hex code, FF7518 right here. So basically it's a little bit darker where it's indented, as you can see. All right, so now we got the color in there. Now we need to make it actually displace. So let's hit Shift A, add a displacement node right here. Let's drop this into the displacement of the material output. And we're going to plug our first color ramp right here into the height of the displacement. Now right here, you can see that we got this right here, which is pretty sweet. Now keep in mind that the displacement only works in cycles. So let's go to cycles right here, change it to cycles, Make sure to go to rendered viewport shading mode, as otherwise you won't see it either. So you have to be in cycles and in rendered viewport shading mode. Go to the material tab. Right here under the settings, we're going to change the displacement from bump only to displacement and bump. And now look at that. Obviously it's way too displaced. So let's change the scale right here to like 0.1 right there. All right, that's looking sweet. Now the next thing I want to do is you can see that this right here, if I Control Shift left click the color ramp, these lines right here are way too straight. I want them to be a little bit crooked and a little bit messier. So over here, I'm going to hit Shift A, add a mix color node, drop it before the gradient texture. I'm then going to get a noise texture right here, and I'm going to plug the vector into the vector here, and let's plug the color into B right here. Let's also change this from mix to linear light. So what this is doing is a value of 0, we're just getting the original vectors from slot A. As we increase the factor, it's going ahead and it's taking these vectors and it's distorting them with the noise texture. So a factor of 1, these vectors are completely distorted with the noise texture. Factor of 0, they are just normal. So we could increase this a little bit so that it's not completely straight. And also you could feel free to change the scale and play around with the values here on the noise texture. I'm going to bump the detail to 15 and put the scale to like a 7 or so. Again, feel free to change it as you want. So now we got this right here. If I Control Shift left click the principled BSDF. Now these are indented a little bit too much. We could also right here, you can see we have some nasty artifacts. So let's right click and change it to shade smooth right there. We could change the scale right here. However, instead of doing that, we could go to the color ramp right here. A black color is a value of 0 and white is a value of 1. So right here with the black, this is where it's being indented. As you can see, if I move this, you can see we have some bigger indentations. So if I go ahead and bring this black color up to a white color, you can see that now we have no more indentations. So what I could do is I could go from black and scroll my mouse wheel up a little bit to make it more of a grayish color and not have the indentations so drastic. So maybe I'll make it like that instead. Or maybe a little bit more, something like that. Also, you can feel free to move this slider closer or further away to get different effects and looks. I'm going to bring it pretty close right here so that the lines are pretty exaggerated and you can see them quite well. And maybe a little bit less, like that. All right, again, feel free to adjust it how you want. This is your pumpkin. And then lastly, I want to add a little bit of noise to the whole pumpkin. Let's also change our light right here to a sun lamp, value of 4 quickly, and rotate it a little bit so we could see. Right here, out of the normal, let's drag out a bump node. From this bump in the height, let's drag out a noise texture. And let's plug this mapping into the vector of that noise. Next, let's put this distance down because it's way too strong. Let's put it to like 0.1, and maybe even that's still too strong, 0.02 maybe. Right here, I'm going to change the scale, increase the scale a little bit, or actually I'm going to put it down to a 2, and maybe something like that, maybe a 6 or something. Again, feel free to play around with these settings as you want, but that looks fine right there. Now maybe this displacement is a little bit too strong, 0.1. Let me change it to 0.05 maybe. There we go. It was a little bit too intense. All right, next let's go to the roughness. Let's bring the roughness down, make it a little shinier. Let's put the subsurface scattering to something. Again, subsurface scattering is when the light penetrates through the mesh and scatters on the inside, such as on organic fruits and vegetables, or your fingers, or things like that. Let's put this to 0.1. You can see right now the subsurface color is white, so that's what's going to show through. But let's make this a light kind of orange color. Also, I'm going to put the clear coat to 1 to make it look like there's a clear coat or some pesticides or wax on here, which is going to look cool. All right, very cool. Next, let's go ahead and texture the stem quickly. For the stem, I'm going to hit Control 2, add a subsurface level of 2. And then right here at the top, I'm going to hit Control R, add a loop cut up there. And I'm going to add a new material. Right here for this one, it's going to be very, very simple. Out of the base color, let's get a color ramp right there. And I'm going to get a noise texture from the factor. Control T, mapping texture coordinate, change it to object. So right now you can see that it's just some black and white. Let's increase the scale, by the way. So if I increase the scale right here, you can see it's just that. For the color, once again, I just went to Google and searched for pumpkin stem hex code, and I got this color right here. So I'm just going to use this one. Feel free to use whatever you want. The hex code I'm using is 274425, and I'm going to paste it here as well. However, for this one, I'm going to make it slightly darker, kind of like a darker color like that. And then I'm going to change the roughness, put the roughness up, and out of the normal, let's get a bump once again, and plug the noise texture factor into the height. Change the distance to something smaller, like 0.01, or maybe 0.04. That's too much, 0.02. I'm also on the noise texture going to increase the detail to 15 and put the roughness up a little bit. And then, of course, bring it down so that's actually in the pumpkin. All right. Again, feel free to adjust that as you want. Lastly, let's go ahead and add some light to this. All right. And then here for the lighting, let's go ahead and first add the fire in here. So I'm going to hit Shift-A, go to Mesh, go to Circle, and change it from nothing to N-Gon as the fill type. Let's move this to the side for now, just so we could see it easier. And let's go to Object, Quick Effects, and Quick Smoke. Now, obviously, smoke is not what we want. So let's select the object right here, the circle, and we're going to go to the Physics tab, change it from smoke to fire right here, and there we go. Now, you'll see one thing is if we go into rendered viewport shading mode, we don't see any fire. And that's because we need to select the bounding box, the domain, and here in the materials, if I hit delete on the numpad to zoom into the materials, we need to change the black body intensity and bring this up. I'm going to put it to 20 right here. And now you can see that we have fire. Now, obviously, this is way too big to put into our pumpkin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and scale this down. I'm going to make sure to select the circle and the domain and hit the S key, scale this way down, and maybe even more. I'm going to hit Control A, apply the scale. Let's see what that looks like. So now you can see this right here. However, obviously the domain's a little small. So with the domain in edit mode, I'm going to select this top face and just hit GZ. Let me turn off proportional editing. GZ, bring this up. And again, this fire is going to be a little bit exaggerated, but there we go. We're going to have a huge flame inside of our pumpkin. Of course, feel free to make this smaller if you want, but I kind of want to exaggerate it. It's still a little bit too big. I'm going to scale it, both of these in object mode, Control A, apply the scale. And then when I'm happy with that, just place it inside the pumpkin. So right there. And then of course, I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected. Shift A, let's add a light, point light. Let me go to render viewport shading mode. And with this point light, let me also delete my sun lamp. So this one, I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to select the point light, go to the lamp properties, change the color to like an orange color for the flames, and put the power to maybe 100 right there. All right, next, or last thing, because we're pretty much done, just add a plane, scale it up. Let me go into solid view right there. I'm going to select this edge, extrude it, Control 2 to add a subdivision surface modifier, shade it smooth, add a loop cut here. I'm just adding a quick backdrop. And then lastly, let me go ahead and position my camera here. So Control Alt Numpad 0, position your camera wherever you want. RZ, rotate that, scale it. And then lastly, we want to go ahead and add a sky texture. So change this from object to world. And right here, we're going to hit Shift A, add a sky texture, plug the color into the color. The higher the elevation is, the closer it is to a sunset, and the lower it is, the closer it is to a sunrise. So I want to put this at like 171, maybe 182, which will be close to a sunset. And then the floor right here, just going to give it a black color like that. Again, feel free to play around with this. Maybe 180 right there. Give it a little bit more light. That's too much. 181. Not 191. 181 right there. And there we go. So now we have our pumpkin. How awesome is that? So lastly, go ahead. Once again, feel free to tweak the options, change them as you want. Once you're ready, go to the render settings right here. Put the time limit to 2 minutes, so 2M, and then just go ahead and hit render image. And after 2 minutes, it's going to go ahead and denoise it. Feel free to increase that time limit to higher limit if you want a crisper render. But usually 2 minutes is pretty good. So I'll come back once this is rendered out. All right, and there we go. We now have a pumpkin. How awesome is that? Now, of course, like I said, feel free to tweak all of the settings as you desire and as you like. Feel free to tweak the lighting. Once you're done, go ahead and share your render on the forums on BlenderMania3.com. With that, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Ciao for now. Au revoir.